Hello and welcome to this episode of Beat Teacher Burnout. We're going to be talking about early years today, primarily because I've got Angelica here with me, who has been working in early years for over 15 years and is an expert in such a wide range of areas. So, why don't we launch straight in, Angelica, and why don't you introduce yourself to everybody and tell us a little bit about you?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Angelica Celinska. I am the founder of The Voice of Early Childhood and also Booked In. The Voice of Early Childhood is a platform for educators working with children 0 to 5 or 0 to 7 internationally, and it supports educators with their CPD, continuous professional development, through a podcast, articles, and events. And then Booked In is a CPD booking platform to support educators and anyone really with their training. So that's the kind of work I work on now. And as you said, I used to work in early years for a number of years. And I think it's really relevant what we're talking about today with my experiences working as an educator and then moving into, well, out of education and into the training side of things and riding the waves of change, I would say, on that journey.
Thank you. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience of stress or burnout, overwhelm, whichever words you would use to describe your
Mm.
situations?
Yeah, there's many ways to describe it, really. So I definitely have had a lot of stress in my life in different ways, in different moments of my life, I guess. And actually, having gone to therapy, I realized that I was experiencing stress as a child in different ways as well. That really affected me as an adult. But going to the working world and that area of my life, working in early years, it is a very stressful job. Teaching or being an educator, we all know that there's so much involved there in terms of you're not just the educator, you're also like the psychologist to the child, like a therapist to the parents as well. And you have all these different roles, as well as the long hours and the demanding work and that high responsibility sat on your shoulders. So I definitely got so stressed that I burnt out. Now, I think it was the first time I really understood what burnout was. I could really feel it in my body, mentally. I just lost interest in everything, really, unfortunately, including the work that I was doing. And that's when I decided to leave the early years sector, and in particular, working in practice with children, because I just felt like I wasn't giving my best self to the children and the team I was working with and the families. So that's when I left the sector. But I could really feel the effects of stress on my, like I said, on my body as well, because I was just constantly exhausted, and not just that kind of exhaustion at the end of the day kind of feeling after you've had a long, stressful, tiring day, but it was like that permanent exhaustion, no matter how much you slept, no matter how many weekends you took off, no matter if you went on holiday, it just wouldn't go away. So definitely can relate to stress leading to burnout and affecting your work a lot. Incredibly, that I had to leave.
Oh my goodness. So, both of us, because of burnout, we had to leave jobs. Well, especially for me, I loved what I did, and I'm sure you were passionate about it as
Yeah.
well. And it's so devastating, isn't it, when we realize there's so many of us out there who've had to leave because of burnout. And I suppose I've obviously done a lot of research. I've written a book because of what I discovered had happened to me and how to put in better strategies so it doesn't happen
Mhm.
to others, I hope. What would you say you have learned that you could do differently or could have done differently to prevent the burnout?
Mm. That's a really big question, I think, because it's difficult looking back and thinking, what could I have done then? Because now I'm a different person and I have a different life. But I guess the biggest thing is always what I hear and what I've heard from different practitioners that I've spoken to around somatics in particular, so how the body affects, how stress affects the body, is noticing different sensations, feelings, different pain points within your body and within your mind as well. So really taking that time, taking that breath to just slow down and notice and really tune into yourself. And it's really hard to do that, especially mentally. So the a really good way of doing that is tuning into your body. So tuning into the physical signs, because they're much easier to spot than the mental signs. So pausing and thinking, yeah, I feel really exhausted today, but I really feel that in my lower back, and it's really bothering me. And then kind of wondering about how your day went, and it goes on from there. You start to build a bit of a monologue of what you've experienced throughout the day, and it's almost like giving yourself a little bit of a therapy session, or just allowing those feelings, emotions, to flow out, or at least in your head, processing things. Basically, you're just processing what's happened. You're processing your day, you're processing your sensations in your body, rather than always being with blinkers on and autopilot. So definitely noticing is a big thing. That's the first step, I would say, because if you don't notice, then you don't know what else to do. And also talking to people. Now, when I was working in early years, and at that period where I felt really burnt out, I didn't talk to anyone about how I was feeling, not even my partner at the time. And now I don't know if that's because of the type of relationship we had, and now I've got a different relationship, or is it because I just didn't open up to anyone? But I didn't talk about the fact that I was so exhausted to the point that I felt like I needed to leave the sector. I just left. I just made that decision myself. And I didn't talk about all the sensations and in my body. I didn't talk about the mental state in terms of feeling very flat and not enjoying the things I used to enjoy. So again, talking is a way of processing everything and getting it out of your head, so it's not just all stuck in there overwhelming you. So yeah, noticing, talking, and then getting help, and professional help is, I would really advocate for that. Of course, having your family around you, your friends supporting you, your leaders, managers, whoever it might be, is really important. But having professional help is really different, because you feel, at first, you feel like you don't want to say anything if you're in therapy, for example. And then because they're a stranger, but then you start to open up more because they're a stranger, because you know they're not judging you, you know that's their job, and it's all objective to them, and it's not someone that you know personally. So you can detach from that personal relationship, and you don't think, how is this going to affect them, what I say? And obviously that person who is the professional is giving you that professional help. They have studied the area of mental health, so they really know what they're talking about. So that's definitely my kind of three things that I would say that really I should have done myself. I should have gone out and got that help, and should have noticed, and should have talked more. And that's something that I did later on down the line, and it certainly did help, all three of those things.
Yeah. I love that you're talking about things that tend to want to talk about, that sense
Hmm.
of needing help and
Yeah.
being brave enough to ask for help and admitting it, because
Mm.
certainly I felt such a failure. But I think you've also spoken about that permanent deep exhaustion that I think a lot of us in education have normalized, and we've said that's
Yeah.
just how it is, but actually it is a massive red flag warning sign that something's not okay, because it's
Mm.
not okay to be permanently deeply empty,
Yes.
exhausted, and just on survival. You start your day there and you finish the day there, but we don't notice, as you say. And I think all of those things that you've mentioned, I think it's really important. And I suppose for me, the other thing I tell people is that I had to go on to antidepressants because the constant high level of stress and the
Mm.
physical symptoms of burnout was so, just I couldn't manage. And I'm not ashamed to say that I went on to antidepressants. It was right for me. I know it's not right for everybody, but I also
Mhm.
went to get some therapy. And I have now leaders in nurseries and schools who come to me for coaching. And I'm definitely not a therapist, but actually I am that completely sort of outside listening
Mhm.
board where they can admit to the
Yes.
reality of their feelings and be heard. And I think it's so important, isn't it, that we do, it's okay to be that way, to feel that way,
Mhm.
to think that way.
Yeah, for sure. And I think this is why podcasts like this are so important, because people get the chance to hear others' experiences and other people open up and realize that they can relate and they've got a lot in common in terms of what they might be struggling with. And like you say, that it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to get help, whether that is therapy, antidepressants, like you say, or anything else. And I think it really brings a lot of calm to people that are struggling to really feel like they're not on their own and it's not just them. And like you said earlier, that you're not a failure in any way, you're not being weak. And actually, you mentioned it's really brave. It is really brave to speak about how you're feeling, because you're being vulnerable in that moment. You don't know what the other person's going to say, you don't know how they're going to react. And it is a scary thing to do. And in terms of, you mentioned antidepressants, it's really interesting because I was reading a study not long ago on that chemical imbalance theory of the fact that when you've got depression, you've got a chemical imbalance in your brain, but it's not as simple as that. You're not just born with a chemical imbalance or not. You can develop depression through stress. And this is why it's so important to talk about this and to be able to do things about stress and burnout. You can develop both depression and anxiety. And a study that I read, a 2022 review study, showed that no, there's no consistent evidence of there being an association between serotonin and depression, and no support for the hypothesis that depression is caused by lowered serotonin activity. So it's not just about the chemical imbalances. There's still that biology side of it. You've got a chemical imbalance, but actually that's not the only prediction of depression. So there's a lot to say that there's strong links between, for example, adverse and traumatic life events and the onset of depression. So it really suggests that low mood is a response to people's lives and can't be boiled down to only that chemical equation.
Yeah, I really hope that helps someone who's listening, because I go back to the sense of being such a failure and feeling such shame around
Mm,
my what I perceived as weakness for not being able to
mm-hmm,
keep going and not being able to be the strong, sort of creative, problem solving, sort of people pleasing person that I was. But I was also
mm-hmm,
good at my job and I loved it. And I was having a positive impact. So it wasn't that I wasn't doing good things.
mm-hmm.
I just, as you say, I wasn't noticing. And
Yeah.
it goes back to, what are we accepting in life and what are we
Mhm.
continuing to carry and to hold on to, that we perhaps need to take notice of and take action.
That's so true. And yeah, that taking action is so vital, because sometimes when you start noticing, you start to get even more stressed, because then you start feeling overwhelmed by all of these things that you're experiencing, and you start overthinking on your own. And that's when it's really important, like I said earlier, to get those thoughts out of your head and make sense of them with someone else. And like, yeah, we both said therapy really helped both of us. And I'll also share that I have actually only recently started taking antidepressants the start of this year. And it's something that I wasn't ready to do back then when I was burnt out. I didn't even consider that as an option. I didn't even consider therapy as an option back then, to be honest. This was back in 2019 or 2018. But then, as I went to therapy and actually felt more comfortable with it, I then started to open up to the possibility of, again, like I mentioned, the chemical imbalance. So the stress causes the chemical imbalance. It's not just there's a chemical imbalance and then that's why you've got depression. So I started to understand that a lot more, the fact that, like you take supplements and vitamins and minerals and things like that. in order to support that balance in your body. It's the same with antidepressants. It's to support you with having more of a balance in your brain, so then you can start to get out of that stressful situation and burnout. It's like a little step up for you, because when you're really low, it's really hard to get back up. There's no motivation a lot of the time, even though you desperately want to feel better. So I feel like the coupling of talking, whether it's like talking therapy or talking with someone else, along with medication, they are a really strong combination to support people who are going through a really hard time for whatever reason and potentially have depression and anxiety.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful and really brave of you to share it. Thank you. And I guess what comes to my mind is that burnout, stress, overwhelm, it looks so different for everybody. And it's really
Yes.
important that everyone gets their own personalized specialist help. But I remember a time, it was must have been about 15 years ago, maybe even 20 years ago, and I was having terrible migraines. And I had children at home at that point, and not really coping with the juggle. And
Mm,
the migraines were really interrupting everything. And the GP sent me to a specialist physio who sat me
mhm.
down, and she looked really intently at me and she said, "Rowena, you're hyperventilating." Now, my knowledge of hyperventilating is like in the movies where you're given a paper bag and
Yeah.
like this, you're breathing into it. And she said, "No, but look at your breathing." And we stopped and watched my breathing, and it was very shallow and fast. And she said to me, "Are you really stressed?" I sort of stopped, and it was at that point I realized just how stressed I probably was, because
Mhm.
I hadn't stopped to notice, as you suggested. I hadn't paused to reflect. I just ran straight through every day and pretty much every through night, all through the night, just to
Mhm.
cope and manage with life. And but even in that, I've subsequently learned that the children that we're working with, they're watching our body language, they're
Yeah.
listening to our heartbeat and our breathing and our sweat and the subliminal messages that we're sending these children. Even when we're saying, "I am calm," they're picking up, especially those with special needs, actually, because they have to be experts at this. They're picking
Mm.
up these messages about, how we really are on the inside, because you cannot fake calm. So what we're
Mm.
talking about is pivotal for both ourselves and our own health, for us and our families and our colleagues, but also for the children because of what they pick up, isn't it?
That is so true, because adults are really that they can be that buffer for children. So if the children are struggling with something, or they've had a adverse childhood experiences or traumatic events happen, then the adult being in a good place and being supportive and caring and loving can be that buffer to support the child and kind of get them out of that stressful state. And also in terms of co-regulation as well, if the adult themselves is not self-regulating, how are they supposed to regulate the children and co-regulate together? So you're so right, stress really does impact everyone around us, and especially young children who pick up on our stress signals so much more than adults do as well. So I would say for people that might be struggling, sometimes it feels a bit selfish to help yourself for yourself, if you know what I mean. So I would say do it for the children. Do it for the children you're working with, because that might give you that motivation to say, actually, I really need to change something here. Because, like I said, when I burnt out, I was just not being my best self anymore for the children and families that I was working with. So thinking of it in that way might help people to step out there and get some support.
I think that is really powerful. I'd never thought about the selfish sort of barrier that we say,
Mm,
helping ourselves and putting ourselves first, having some rest and taking time for us is so selfish. But actually, what you're saying is the children need us to be doing it. Those
yeah.
around us need us to be doing it because, as you say, we can't be our best selves, can we?
Definitely. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. That's really powerful for me. And I think I wish someone had said that to me years ago, because I think I almost threw myself into everything, trying to be
Mm.
more and to do more, never feeling I could do or be enough,
Mhm.
which had the opposite effect to what I wanted it to have, if you like.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
and that feeling of not being enough, not being able to do enough, that is something that also needs to be explored within you. And again, for me, therapy really helped with that because it's not just that's just how you are and that's it. That must come from somewhere and potentially from your childhood. So it's so vital to be able to have that safe space to be able to unpick different childhood traumas, perhaps experiences, to really dig deeper into where are these feelings coming from, the feelings of I'm not good enough, I need to do more, of
Mhm.
shame if you ask for help, because they're not just simple feelings that just arise out of nothing. They are deep rooted. So it's really important to, again, notice where they're coming, notice that they're there, notice where they're coming from, try and unpick where they're coming from, and then be able to work through them and talk through them to kind of like convince yourself that you shouldn't be feeling that way and it's not healthy for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess the way I put it when I talk to groups of educators is that we need to learn to value ourselves. We need to
Hmm.
understand our worth, because until we do that, we can't be the best version of ourselves, which is going to impact us and it's going to impact
Hmm.
our families, our workplaces. It's actually going to impact everyone that we meet if we're not our best self. Because if I'm not my best self, if you're not your best self, Angelica, we're not creative, we're not happy and relaxed and
Hmm.
problem solving and able to bring the best of what we have inside us, all of our strengths and our gifts. It doesn't come out because we almost shut down, don't we, when we're
Yeah.
stressed and overwhelmed and not looking after ourselves.
Yeah, definitely. We shut down, or we're not patient enough, we're not kind enough to others, we're a bit more snappy and irritable, and the self-regulation goes out the window as well. You like I say, you're irritable, you when you're stressed, and it's really not helpful for relationships. And also, I think it stops you from being present. That's another big thing. And sometimes that might seem like it's not that significant as if you were to snap at someone. And it's really hard to notice when someone might not be that present with you, where it's easier to notice when they've snapped at you. So I think it's really important to understand when, for either for other people to notice that you're not being present, or for you to somehow notice that. It's harder for you to notice it yourself, but I think lack of presence really drives people away slowly. And I think it's something that people don't think about enough. And when they're just, even when, for instance, you come home to your partner, you've had a really long, stressful day, and you just sit down and you just kind of watching TV together, but you're kind of not, because you're both on your phones and you're not present with each other or with the activity that you're doing or anything like that. And because that drives people away from each other, then there's that, again, lack of communication. So you haven't got that supportive, safe space to talk about your feelings and your burnout and your stress. And you don't feel like you can open up because you haven't got that strong relationship, whether it might be a partner, a friendship, or someone at work. So I think, yeah, presence is really vital, and also vital for yourself in terms of de-stressing. Being present really supports you to be, obviously, in the moment, and it's really about mindfulness, and that really supports your well-being and helping you to kind of come out of that stress cycle as well.
Yeah. I love that reminder, that the importance of us being fully present, because actually that's the biggest gift you can give, isn't it? To be
Mhm.
fully there, to be fully listening and attentive to someone, rather than be physically there and mentally miles away,
Mm.
because your cognitive
Yeah.
load is just exploding and the things that you're worrying about are just much more present in your mind.
Mhm.
than the little person who's standing in front of you, or
Yeah.
the colleague who just needs to talk. You're not going to be there if you're not, when you're not going to be useful, and you're not going to be valuable and
Mhm.
helpful. And again, it comes back to your best self if you're not fully present. Angelica, to talk about how we can build our capability to be fully present, because that
Mhm.
feels really important.
Yeah.
But I do want to honor people's time, and they've told me they want it under 30 minutes.
Mhm.
Angelica, thank you for sharing so much today. If people want to find out more about you and what you do, where would they go?
I would say LinkedIn is probably the best place to find me. Just connect with me, message me if you want to work with me or have a conversation or find out any more about the work that I do about the voice of early childhood or booked in. Yeah, that's definitely the best place.
Okay, thank you so much. And it's been really quite insightful. We've had a really, how can I describe it? A very open and honest and vulnerable conversation
Mm,
today. And I'm so grateful to you for being so brave to share like that. And I really
thank
hope that
you.
people listening have found that helpful. So thank you so
Mhm.
much. And thanks everyone for listening.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening. I hope you took something of value from today. If you want to connect, I'm at rowenahicks.com, or I have a Facebook group, which is Preventing Teacher Burnout. So I look forward to connecting to you at one of those.